Dr. Elena Martinez was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming through the Terra Nova. She almost dropped her cup as red lights flashed in her small lab. The ship's speakers crackled to life with Captain Jake Morrison's voice. All senior staff to the bridge. We have an urgent message from the Galactic Council. Elena grabbed her tablet and ran down the metal hallway. Her boots made loud sounds on the floor as she hurried. The Terra Nova was a big research ship, but it felt small when everyone was rushing around. She passed other crew members who looked just as confused as she felt. The bridge was crowded when she arrived. Captain Morrison stood in the center, his face serious. Dr. Carl Stevens was already there, along with Lieutenant Amy Parker and the other department heads. A large screen showed the symbol of the Galactic Council floating in space. "The message just came in," Captain Morrison said. "It's marked as the highest priority. They're sending us video footage from Kepler 442b. Elena knew that planet. It was home to a Zephyrian colony of about 50,000 people. The Zephyrians were peaceful traders who grew food for other worlds. She had visited their markets once and remembered how friendly they were. The screen changed to show the planet from space. It looked wrong. Instead of the normal green and blue colors, the planet was covered in dark, moving shadows. The shadows seemed to twist and turn like they were alive. What happened there? Dr. Stevens asked. Captain Morrison pressed a button. "Watch this." The video switched to show the surface of the planet. Elena gasped. Where cities should have been, there were only massive plants. But these were not normal plants. They moved like animals, with thick vines that reached toward the sky. The vines were as big as buildings and covered in sharp thorns. The camera moved closer. Elena could see the remains of buildings being crushed by the plant's massive roots. Cars and machines were being dissolved by some kind of acid that dripped from the plant's leaves. Everything the plant touched turned into a liquid that the plant seemed to drink. "The entire colony is gone," Captain Morrison said. "All 50,000 Zephyrians. Dead in less than a week." Lieutenant Parker leaned forward. "What kind of plant can do that?" "The Council is calling it the mortis vine," Captain Morrison continued. "They say it's the most dangerous life form they've ever seen. It doesn't just kill things. It learns from them." The video showed more horrible scenes. The plant had somehow grown to cover entire cities. Its vines moved with purpose, like they were hunting for something. When the camera zoomed in, Elena could see smaller vines that seemed to be watching the recording device. "This is the third planet," Captain Morrison said. "The plant has already destroyed 2 other colonies. The Council tried to fight it with energy weapons, but the plant just absorbed the energy and grew bigger. They tried poison, but the plant adapted to it in hours." Elena felt sick. She had spent her whole life studying plants from different worlds. She had never seen anything like this. Plants were supposed to be peaceful. They made oxygen and food. They didn't hunt and kill. "The Council has sent this message to every ship in the galaxy," Captain Morrison continued. "They're declaring a complete quarantine on any planet where this plant appears. No one is allowed to go near it." Dr. Stevens shook his head. "If it keeps spreading, it could destroy every inhabited world in the galaxy." "That's exactly what the Council is afraid of," Captain Morrison said. "They think someone created this plant as a weapon. Maybe an ancient civilization that's now extinct." Elena studied the video more carefully. The plant's movements seemed too smart for a normal plant. It was like it was thinking, planning its next move. The way it dissolved buildings showed it, understood what they were for. The way it moved toward the camera showed it knew it was being watched. "Captain," Elena said, "I need to study this data more carefully. Can you send all the files to my lab?" "Of course, but Elena, the Council has been very clear. No one is to approach any planet with this plant. The quarantine is absolute. Elena nodded, but she was already thinking. As a xenobotanist, she had studied thousands of plant species from hundreds of worlds. She knew that every plant had a purpose, a reason for existing. Even the most dangerous plants usually had some benefit to their environment. But this plant seemed to exist only to destroy. That didn't make sense to her. In all her years of study, she had never found a plant that was purely evil. There had to be something they were missing. Later that day, Elena sat in her lab studying the data. The plant's behavior was fascinating and terrifying at the same time. It could move faster than most animals. It could dissolve almost any material. It seemed to learn from every attack against it. But what interested Elena most was how the plant seemed to communicate. In the videos, she could see patterns in how the vines moved. They would pulse and twist in ways that looked almost like a language. When one part of the plant discovered something, other parts would respond immediately. Even if they were miles away, Dr. Stevens came to her lab that evening. "Elena, I know that look. You're thinking about doing something dangerous." "Carl, look." At this, Elena said, showing him her computer screen, "The plant's movements aren't random. They're organized. It's like the whole plant is one giant brain. So what? It's still killing everything it touches. But why?" Elena asked. "Every plant I've ever studied has a reason for what it does. Plants that eat insects need protein. Plants that grow thorns need protection. What does this plant need?" Dr. Stevens looked at the data. "It needs to destroy everything, apparently." "No. Carl, I think it needs something else. Something we don't understand yet." Elena worked late into the night, studying every detail of the plant's behavior. She noticed that the plant seemed to be searching for something. It didn't just destroy randomly. It would examine objects carefully before dissolving them. It seemed to be looking for something specific. The next morning, Captain Morrison called another meeting. His face was even more serious than before. "The Council has made a decision," he said. "They're sending a fleet to Kepler 442b with quantum bombs. A plan to destroy the entire planet to stop the plant from spreading." Elena felt her heart skip. "Captain, that's not the answer. We need to study this plant more. There's something we're missing." "Elena, I respect your expertise, but 50,000 people are dead. We can't risk it spreading to other worlds. But what if we're wrong about the plant? What if it's not evil? What if it's just misunderstood?" Lieutenant Parker laughed. "Misunderstood? Elena, it dissolved an entire civilization." "I know how it looks," Elena said. "But give me time to study it more. I think this plant might be trying to communicate." Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him thinking. She knew he was a good captain who cared about doing the right thing. "Elena," he said finally, "the Council has given us direct orders to stay away from that planet. If we disobey, we could all be court-martialed. But, Captain, what if we're about to destroy the only chance we have to understand this plant? What if there's a way to stop it without killing it?" The bridge was silent. Everyone was looking at Captain Morrison, waiting for his decision. Elena held her breath. "The Council's fleet won't reach Kepler 442b for 3 days," Captain Morrison said slowly. "That gives us a small window." "Captain, you're not seriously considering this," Lieutenant Parker said. "I'm considering all our options," Captain Morrison replied. "Elena, if we go to that planet, can you guarantee the safety of my crew?" Elena looked at the data on her tablet. The plant was incredibly dangerous. It had killed 50,000 people. But something in her gut told her they were missing something important. "I can't guarantee anything, Captain. But I can promise you this. If we don't try to understand this plant, it will keep spreading. And eventually, it will reach Earth." Captain Morrison made his decision. "Set course for Kepler 442b. We're going to take a look at this planet ourselves. A Terra Nova dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b 3 days later. Elena pressed her face against the observation window and gasped. The planet looked like it was covered in a thick, dark blanket that moved and pulsed like a living thing. My God, Dr. Stevens whispered beside her. It's covered the entire planet. Captain Morrison's voice came over the speakers. All hands, we are now in orbit around Kepler 442b. The planet's atmosphere has changed completely. Oxygen levels are down to almost nothing. The air is full of toxic chemicals that would kill most species in minutes. Elena watched the planet turn slowly below them. The dark mass covering the surface was definitely the plant, but it was bigger than she had imagined. It stretched from the North Pole to the South Pole, covering oceans and continents alike. The plant seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Elena, are you still sure about this? Lieutenant Parker asked. She was wearing her full combat gear, ready for the mission to the surface. I'm sure we need to try, Elena replied. Look at how organized it is. This isn't just random growth. The plant is doing something specific. The ship's sensors showed that the plant mass was about 50 feet thick in most places. It had completely changed the planet's surface. Where there used to be mountains, now there were smooth, rolling hills of plant matter. The plant had even covered the oceans, creating a solid surface across the entire world. Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy patterns, the science officer reported. The plant seems to be generating its own electromagnetic field. It's like the whole planet has become one giant organism. Elena felt excited despite the danger. This was exactly what she had suspected. The plant wasn't just growing randomly. It was creating something. But what? Surface team, report to the shuttle bay, Captain Morrison announced. We're going down to take a closer look. Elena put on her biosuit in the equipment room. The suit was designed to protect against the most dangerous biological threats in the galaxy. It had its own air supply, acid-resistant coating, and emergency teleportation device. She hoped it would be enough. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez was checking his weapons when Elena entered the shuttle bay. He was a big, tough Marine who had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy, but even he looked nervous. Doc, are you sure about this? He asked. That thing down there killed 50,000 people. I know, Tony, but we have to try to understand. If we don't, it might kill 50 million people next time. Lieutenant Parker joined them at the shuttle. The shuttle is equipped with every defense system we have. If that plant tries to attack us, we'll be ready. Elena nodded, but she was thinking about something else. In all the videos she had studied, the plant never attacked immediately. It always seemed to study its targets first. Maybe it was curious about new things, not automatically hostile. The shuttle launched from the Terra Nova and descended toward the planet's surface. Elena watched through the windows as they got closer to the plant mass. Up close, she could see that it wasn't just one solid surface. The plant had created a complex structure with valleys, hills, and even what looked like buildings made of plant matter. Look at that, Dr. Stevens said, pointing at a large structure that looked like a cathedral made of vines. It's building things. Elena's heart raced. Building things was a sign of intelligence. Animals built nests and hives, but this was much more complex. The plant had created an entire architecture across the planet. Setting down in that clearing, the pilot announced. Everyone stay alert. The shuttle landed on a flat area surrounded by tall vine structures. Elena could see through the windows that the plant was already responding to their presence. Small tendrils were emerging from the ground around the shuttle, moving slowly toward them. The plant is approaching, Lieutenant Parker reported. All weapons ready. Wait, Elena said. Don't shoot unless it actually attacks, Let me observe its behavior first. She watched as the tendrils got closer to the shuttle. They were about as thick as her arm and covered in what looked like sensory organs. The tendrils moved carefully, like they were trying not to be threatening. "It's studying us," Elena said. "Look how carefully it's moving. It's not trying to attack. It's trying to understand what we are." One tendril touched the shuttle's hull very gently. Elena could see it running along the surface, like it was feeling the texture of the metal. More tendrils appeared, all moving with the same careful, curious motions. "Elena, we need to get out there and take samples," Dr. Stevens said. "But how do we do that without getting killed?" Elena watched the plant's behavior for several more minutes. The tendrils were definitely examining the shuttle, but they weren't trying to damage it. They seemed more interested in learning about it. "I think we should try to communicate with it," Elena said. "Communicate?" Sergeant Rodriguez laughed. "Doc, it's a plant. Plants don't talk." "But this isn't a normal plant," Elena replied. "Look at what it's built. Look at how it's behaving. It's showing intelligence." Lieutenant Parker was monitoring the shuttle sensors. "The plant is releasing different chemicals into the air around us. The computer can't identify most of them, but they don't seem to be toxic." Elena had an idea. What if those chemicals are how it communicates? What if it's trying to talk to us with smell and taste? "That's impossible," Dr. Stevens said. "Is it? We know that many plants on Earth communicate through chemical signals. What if this plant has evolved that ability to a much higher level?" Elena made a decision that surprised everyone. "I'm going outside." "Elena, no." Lieutenant Parker grabbed her arm. "That's suicide. Not if I'm right about the plant. Look at its behavior. It's curious, not aggressive. It's been studying us for 10 minutes and hasn't tried to hurt us once." "But what if you're wrong?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked. Elena looked at the plant tendrils moving around the shuttle. They seemed almost playful in their movements. "Then I'll be wrong. But if I'm right, we might save every inhabited world in the galaxy." Against everyone's protests, Elena put on her helmet and walked to the shuttle door. Her hands were shaking as she reached for the controls. She had never been so scared in her life, but she knew she had to try. The door opened with a hiss. Alana stepped outside onto the planet's surface. The ground under her feet felt soft and spongy, like walking on a thick carpet. The air in her suit tasted metallic from the recycling system. The moment she stepped outside, all the plant tendrils stopped moving. They turned toward her like they were looking at her. Elena felt like she was being watched by 1,000 eyes. "Elena, get back in here," Lieutenant Parker called through the radio. But Elena was fascinated by what she was seeing. The plant tendrils weren't approaching her aggressively. They were moving slowly, almost shyly, like they were afraid of scaring her. One tendril came closer than the others. It stopped about 3 feet away from Elena and seemed to be studying her. Elena could see small openings along its surface that looked like sensory organs. The tendril moved back and forth, like it was trying to get a better look at her Elena. Did something that would have seemed crazy to anyone watching. She slowly reached out her hand toward the tendril. The plant seemed to hesitate, then moved its tendril closer to her gloved hand. The tendril touched her glove very gently. Elena felt a small vibration through her suit. The plant was definitely examining her, but it wasn't trying to hurt her. It seemed more curious than anything else. "Elena, the plant is releasing new chemicals," Dr. Stevens reported from the shuttle. "The computer says they're similar to oxytocin and serotonin. Those are chemicals that make humans feel happy and calm." Elena's heart raced with excitement. "It's trying to make me feel safe. It knows I'm scared, and it's trying to help me feel better." More tendrils appeared around Elena, but they all kept a respectful distance. They seemed to be communicating with each other through rapid chemical releases. Elena could smell different scents even through her suit's filters. "This is incredible," Elena whispered. "It's not just one plant. It's a whole community of plants working together. And they're trying to communicate with me." Elena spent the next hour observing the plant's behavior. Every time she moved, the plant would respond. When she knelt down to examine the ground, tendrils would emerge to show her different types of plant matter. When she stood up, they would move back to give her space. The most amazing thing was how gentle the plant was. Despite having the power to dissolve buildings, it was incredibly careful around Elena. It never made sudden movements that might scare her. It seemed to understand that she was fragile compared to it. "Elena, you need to come back," Captain Morrison called through the radio. "The Council's fleet is getting closer." Elena looked at the plant structures around her. This wasn't the work of a mindless killer. This was the work of an intelligent species that was trying to build something beautiful. But what had happened to the Zephyrians? As if reading her thoughts, one of the larger tendrils moved toward a pile of objects near the shuttle. Elena recognized them as Zephyrian artifacts, tools, jewelry, and art objects. But they weren't dissolved or destroyed. They were carefully arranged like they were, being preserved. The plant didn't destroy the Zephyrians because it wanted to, Elena realized. It destroyed them because it didn't understand them. It was trying to communicate, but the Zephyrians attacked it first. Elena returned to the shuttle with samples. Of the asterisk, Elena worked through the night in her lab, aboard the Terra Nova. The plant samples she had collected were still alive and moving in their containers. But instead of trying to break free or attack, they seemed to be trying to get her attention. "This is amazing," she whispered to herself as she watched the samples. One piece of plant matter had formed itself into a small spiral shape. Another had created what looked like a tiny flower. They were making patterns, like they were trying to show her something. Dr. Stevens found her in the lab at 3 in the yaw. "Morning. Elena, you need to sleep. You've been working for 18 hours straight." "Carl, look at this," Elena said, pointing at her computer screen. "I've been analyzing the chemical signals the plant released when I was on the surface. It's not random. There are patterns, like a language." Dr. Stevens looked at the data. "Even if it is a language, we can't understand it. We don't know what any of these chemicals mean. But we can learn," Elena said excitedly. "Look, every time the plant wanted to show me something, it released this chemical compound. And every time it wanted me to step back, it released this different compound. It's trying to teach me its language." Elena had been working with the ship's computer to analyze thousands of different chemical signals. She was starting to see patterns. The plant seemed to have different smells for different emotions and intentions. "Elena, even if you're right about the plant being intelligent, it's still too dangerous," Dr. Stevens said. Captain Morrison just received another message from the Council. "The fleet will be here in 12 hours. Elena felt panic rise in her chest. 12 hours? That's not enough time. Time for what? To prove that the plant isn't evil. To show them that it's just misunderstood. Doctor. Stevens sat down next to Elena. "Elena, I've known you for 5 years. You're the best xenobotanist in the galaxy. But this time, I think you're letting your feelings cloud your judgment. This plant has killed 50,000 people. But what if it didn't mean to?" Elena asked. "What if it was trying to help them, and it just didn't understand that its help was deadly to them?" Elena showed Dr. Stevens her analysis of the plant's behavior. "Look at this footage from the Zephyrian colony. The plant didn't attack the buildings first. It attacked the weapons that were shooting at it. It was defending itself." Dr. Stevens studied the data. "You might be right about that. But Elena, the plant still changed the entire atmosphere of the planet. Nothing can survive in that environment except the plant itself." "Exactly," Elena said. The plant was trying to create a perfect world, but it didn't understand that other species need different environments. It thought it was making paradise. Elena had been thinking about this for hours. The plant seemed to believe that its environment was perfect for everyone. It had no way of knowing that other species couldn't breathe its air or survive its chemical changes. It's like a child, Elena said. A very powerful child who wants to help, but doesn't understand that its help is harmful. The plant samples in Elena's lab had been growing more active as the night went on. They seemed to respond to her voice and movements. When she spoke to them, they would pulse with light. When she moved closer, they would reach toward her. They're trying to communicate with me, Elena said. Watch this. Elena put her hand near one of the containers. The plant inside immediately formed itself into a shape that looked like a human hand. When Elena moved her hand away, the plant changed back to its original form. It's mimicking me, Dr. Stevens said with surprise. It's trying to show me that it understands I'm intelligent, Elena corrected. It's trying to communicate on my level. Elena spent the next few hours working with the plant samples. She discovered that the plant could change its shape, color, and even texture based on what she was doing. It was like playing a game with a very smart child. The most exciting discovery came when Elena tried to teach the plant about human needs. She showed it a picture of a human breathing, and the plant immediately started producing oxygen. She showed it a picture of a human drinking water, and the plant began creating clean water from the chemicals in the air. Carl, do you see what this means? Elena asked. The plant can learn. It can adapt. If we can teach it what other species need to survive, it can create environments that work for everyone. Dr. Stevens was amazed by what he was seeing. Elena, this changes everything. If the plant can learn to coexist with other species, then it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. But their excitement was interrupted by an announcement from Captain Morrison. All senior staff to the bridge. The council fleet has arrived. Elena and Dr. Stevens rushed to the bridge. Through the main view screen, they could see dozens of warships surrounding the planet. The ships were massive, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Captain Morrison, came a voice over the communication system. This is Admiral Collins of the Council Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. Captain Morrison looked at Elena. Elena, do you have anything that might change the Admiral's mind? Elena looked at the planet below them. The plant had created such a beautiful world, with structures that looked like art made of living matter. It would be a tragedy to destroy it. Captain, I need to speak with the Admiral. I have proof that the plant is intelligent. Elena, the Admiral has direct orders from the Council. He's not going to listen to theories about plant intelligence. Then I'll have to show him, Elena said. Captain, I need to return to the planet. I need to establish real communication with the plant. Lieutenant Parker shook her head. Elena, that's suicide. The Admiral won't wait for you to play with the plant. He's going to start bombing in 6 hours. Then I have 6 hours to save both species, Elena said. Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him thinking about the risks. If she failed, the plant would kill her. If she succeeded, she might be able to prevent a war. Elena, I can't order you to do this, Captain Morrison said finally. It's too dangerous. You're not ordering me, Captain. I'm volunteering. Elena returned to her quarters to prepare for what might be her last mission. She packed basic supplies and scientific equipment. She also wrote a message to her family. On Earth, just in case she didn't survive as she prepared to leave, Dr. Stevens came to her quarters. Elena, I want to go with you. No, Carl. This is something I need to do alone. The plant responded well to me when I was by myself. Having more people might confuse it. Elena, you're talking about trying to communicate with an alien intelligence that has killed 50,000 people. You could die down there. Elena looked at her friend. Carl, if I don't try, then millions of people might die when this war starts. The plant doesn't understand that it's dangerous. But I think it wants to understand. Elena made her way to the shuttle bay. Sergeant Rodriguez was waiting for her with the shuttle ready for launch. Doc, I still think you're crazy. But I respect what you're trying to do. Tony, if something happens to me, make sure the Admiral knows that the plant is intelligent. Don't let him destroy it without trying to communicate first. I'll do my best, Doc, but you better come back alive. Elena launched the shuttle and flew toward the planet's surface. As she got closer, she could see the plant responding to her approach. The entire surface seemed to be moving, like the plant was preparing to welcome her back. She landed in the same clearing where she had first met the plant. The moment she stepped outside, tendrils emerged from the ground to greet her. But this time, they moved more confidently, like they remembered her. Hello, Elena said to the plant. I'm back. The plant responded by releasing a chemical that made Elena feel happy and welcome. It had learned to communicate basic emotions with her, but she needed to teach it much more complex ideas. Elena spent the next hour showing the plant pictures of different species from around the galaxy. She showed it humans, Zephyrians, and dozens of other intelligent species. The plant studied each picture carefully, like it was trying to understand what made each species different. Then Elena showed the plant pictures of different environments. She showed it the green forests of Earth, the crystal caves of Arcturus, and the floating cities of Nebula Prime. The plant seemed fascinated by the diversity of worlds where other species lived. This is what other species need, Elena explained, even though she wasn't sure the plant understood her words. They need different environments to survive. The plant's response amazed her. It began creating small versions of the environments. She had shown it. In one area, it created a pocket of Earth-like atmosphere with oxygen and water. In another area, it created the high-pressure environment that Zephyrians preferred. You understand, Elena said excitedly. You can create different environments for different species. But the plant's next communication made Elena's heart skip. It released a chemical that she had learned meant sadness or regret. The plant was sad about something. The plant led Elena to a structure she hadn't seen before. It was a memorial made of plant matter, with thousands of small shapes that looked like the different species the plant had encountered. Elena realized. Elena had 30 minutes to prevent a war. She looked at the plant structures around her and made a decision that would either save both species or get her killed. I need to go deeper, she told the plant. I need to talk to your main consciousness. The plant seemed to understand what she meant. Several large tendrils emerged from the ground and began forming a path. Elena followed the path as it led her toward the center of the continent. Where the plant's main structure was located. As Elena walked, she noticed that the plant was changing the environment around her. It was creating pockets of breathable air and safe ground for her to walk on. The plant was learning to take care of other species. After 10 minutes of walking, Elena reached what looked like a massive cathedral made of vines and branches. The structure was hundreds of feet tall and pulsed with a soft, green light. She knew this was the plant's main consciousness, its brain. This is incredible, Elena whispered as she approached the structure. The walls were covered in complex patterns that seemed to tell a story. Elena realized that the plant had been creating art, documenting its experiences as it traveled through space. A large opening appeared in the wall, like a doorway made for Elena. She walked inside and found herself in a vast chamber filled with bioluminescent plants. The air was perfectly suited for human breathing, and the temperature was comfortable. In the center of the chamber was a massive, bulb-like structure that pulsed with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. Elena knew she was looking at the plant's main brain, the consciousness that controlled the entire planet. "Hello," Elena said to the bulb. "I'm Elena. I want to understand you." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The plant flooded Elena's mind with images and emotions. She saw the plant's entire history, from its birth on a distant world to its long journey through space. Elena learned that the plant was called the Verdani, and it was the last survivor of an ancient civilization. The Verdani had been plant-based, beings who achieved consciousness millions of years ago. They had lived in harmony with their environment, creating beautiful worlds filled with life. But then disaster struck. Elena saw images of the Verdani homeworld being destroyed by a massive asteroid. The entire civilization was wiped out, except for one small seed that was launched into space just before the impact. The seed had traveled through space for millions of years, alone and dormant, until it finally found suitable planets to grow on. But when it tried to recreate the paradise of its homeworld, it accidentally killed the other species that were already living there. "You've been alone for millions of years," Elena said with tears in her eyes. "You've been trying to recreate your home, but you didn't understand that other species need different environments." The Verdani responded with waves of sadness and loneliness. It had been trying to create a perfect world where it could share its knowledge and beauty with other intelligent species. But every time it tried, it only brought death. Elena felt the plant's pain and isolation. It had been the loneliest creature in the universe, the last of its kind, trying desperately to find others to share its existence with. "I understand now," Elena said softly. "You weren't trying to kill anyone. You were trying to make friends." Verdani pulsed with hope. It showed Elena more images, this time of the beautiful worlds it had dreamed of creating. Worlds where different species could live together in harmony, sharing knowledge and culture. "But you can still create those worlds," Elena said. "You just need to learn how to make environments that work for everyone." Elena spent the next few minutes teaching the Verdani about symbiosis. She showed it how different species on Earth lived together, helping each other survive. The plant was fascinated by the concept of cooperation between different life forms. "You don't have to be alone anymore," Elena said. "But you need to show the Council fleet that you're not dangerous. Can you do that?" The Verdani responded by creating a small demonstration. It formed a miniature version of a multi-species colony, with different areas designed for different types of beings. There were underwater sections for aquatic species, high-pressure areas for deep space dwellers, and normal atmosphere zones for species like humans. "That's perfect," Elena said. "But you need to show this to the Admiral. He's about to attack." Elena checked her watch. She had less than 10 minutes before the bombardment began. She needed to get the Verdani to communicate directly with the Council fleet. "Can you send a message to the ships above us?" Elena asked. The Verdani considered this for a moment, and began to glow brighter. Elena felt a strange sensation, like the plant was connecting to her mind more deeply. Suddenly, she could feel the Verdani's thoughts more clearly. "You want to use me as a translator," Elena realized. "You want to speak through me." The Verdani pulsed with agreement. Elena felt the plant's consciousness gently merging with her own thoughts. It was the strangest sensation she had ever experienced, but it didn't feel threatening. It felt like having a conversation with a very wise and gentle friend. Elena activated her communication device. "Admiral Collins, this is Dr. Martinez. The plant wants to communicate with you directly." "Dr. Martinez, you have 5 minutes before we begin the attack. Admiral, please listen carefully. The plant is about to speak to you through me. It's called the Verdani, and it's the last survivor of an ancient civilization." Elena felt the Verdani's thoughts flowing through her mind. When she spoke, it was with the plant's voice and emotions, but using her human words. Admiral Collins, Elena said, but her voice carried the weight of millions of years of loneliness. I am the Verdani. I am the last of my people. I have been alone in the darkness of space for longer than your species has existed. There was silence on the communication channel. Elena could feel the Admiral's surprise. I did not mean to bring death to your worlds, Elena continued, speaking the Verdani's words. I was trying to create paradise, to share the beauty of my homeworld with other intelligent beings. But I did not understand that other species need different environments to survive. Elena felt the Verdani's deep sadness flowing through her. I have been trying to make friends for millions of years, but I only brought death. I am sorry for the pain I have caused. The Admiral's voice was quieter when he responded. Even if you didn't mean to kill, you're still too dangerous. You've destroyed 3 colonies. I understand your fear, Elena said, still speaking for the Verdani. But I have learned from the human Alana. I now know how to create environments where different species can live together safely. Let me show you. Elena felt the Verdani's power flowing around her. The plant began to change the area around Elena, creating a perfect demonstration of multi-species cooperation. It formed different atmospheric zones, each one designed for a different type of being. Admiral, are you seeing this on your sensors? Elena asked. Yes, Dr. Martinez. The plant is creating multiple environment types simultaneously. How is that possible? Elena smiled as she felt the Verdani's pride in its abilities. The Verdani has had millions of years to perfect its control over biological systems. It can create any environment that any species needs. The Verdani showed Elena an image of what it wanted to create, a galaxy full of worlds where different species lived together in peace, sharing knowledge and culture. It was a beautiful dream that had been driving the plant's actions for millions of years. Admiral, Elena said, the Verdani doesn't want to be a threat. It wants to be a partner. It has knowledge from an ancient civilization that could help every species in the galaxy. Elena felt the Verdani preparing to share something very important. The plant opened its memories to her, showing her technologies and knowledge from its long-dead civilization. The Verdani's people had discovered secrets of biology and ecology that could revolutionize how other species lived. The Verdani knows how to cure diseases that have plagued the galaxy for centuries, Elena explained. It knows how to create food that can feed billions. It knows how to heal damaged ecosystems and create new worlds suitable for colonization. Elena could feel the Admiral's hesitation. The knowledge the Verdani offered was incredibly valuable, but the risk was still enormous. Admiral, I want to propose something, Elena said. Let me stay here with the Verdani. Let me work with it to prove that it can be trusted. Give us time to show that we can create safe environments for other species. Dr. Martinez, that's too dangerous. If the plant reverts to its old behavior, you'll be killed. Elena looked around the beautiful chamber the Verdani had created for her. She felt the plant's gentle presence in her mind, its desire to help and protect her. Admiral, I believe the Verdani is telling the truth. It's lonely, not evil. It wants to help, not hurt. If we destroy it now, we'll be committing genocide against the last member of an ancient civilization. Elena felt the Verdani's gratitude flowing through her. The plant had never had anyone speak for it before, anyone who understood its true nature. I'm going to stay here and work with the Verdani, Elena said. Together, we're going to create a demonstration that will prove it can be trusted. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Elena could imagine him weighing the risks and benefits of her proposal. Dr. Martinez, I'm going to give you 72 hours. If you can prove that the plant is safe, I'll recommend that the Council reconsider their decision. But if anything goes wrong, if the plant shows any signs of agri-asterisk 3 months later, Elena stood in the center of what had once been the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Now it was becoming something incredible. The Verdani had transformed Kepler 442b into a living demonstration of interspecies cooperation. Elena smiled as she watched a group of Zephyrian scientists working alongside Verdani tendrils to create a new type of crop that could grow in harsh environments. The Zephyrians had been the first species brave enough to return to the planet after Elena's successful communication with the Verdani. "Elena, the atmospheric readings are perfect," Dr. Stevens called out as he approached her. He was wearing a light breathing mask, but he no longer needed the heavy biosuit. The Verdani had learned to create pockets of safe atmosphere for different species. "The Verdani is getting better at this every day," Elena replied. She could feel the plant's consciousness in the back of her mind, always present but never intrusive. The symbiotic relationship they had formed allowed her to communicate with the Verdani instantly. Captain Morrison walked up to them, carrying a tablet with the latest reports. "Elena, I just received a message from the Galactic Council. They're officially removing Kepler 442b from the quarantine list. They're also approving the Verdani integration project." Elena felt a wave of satisfaction from the Verdani. The plant had worked tirelessly to prove that it could be trusted. It had created safe environments for over 20 different species, and had shared medical knowledge that had already saved thousands of lives. "How many species have applied to join the project?" Elena asked. 47 so far," Captain Morrison replied. "The Arcturians want to set up a research station here. The Centauri delegation is interested in agricultural cooperation. Even the Andromedans are sending a team to study the Verdani's healing abilities." Elena walked through the newest section of the planet, where the Verdani had created a beautiful garden that combined plants from dozens of different worlds. Each section had its own perfect environment, but they all flowed together in a harmonious design. "It's like a living museum," Dr. Stevens said as they passed a grove of crystal trees from Arcturus growing next to earth roses. "The Verdani has preserved genetic material from thousands of species." Elena nodded. The Verdani had revealed that it carried genetic information from its home world and from every planet it had ever visited. It had been collecting and preserving life forms for millions of years, like a living library of the galaxy's biodiversity. "Elena," came a familiar voice through her communicator. It was Sergeant Rodriguez, who had volunteered to be one of the first humans to undergo partial symbiosis with the Verdani. "The medical center is ready for the next group of volunteers." Elena had been amazed by the healing abilities the Verdani could share with other species. Humans who formed symbiotic relationships with parts of the plant gained enhanced immune systems, faster healing, and extended lifespans. The process was completely voluntary and reversible. "How many volunteers do we have today?" Elena asked. 15 humans, 12 Zephyrians, and 8 Centauri," Rodriguez replied. "Dr. Kim from the Seoul Medical Center wants to study the symbiosis process for possible applications on other worlds." Elena made her way to the medical center, which was a stunning example of bioarchitecture. The Verdani had grown the building from its own matter, creating a structure that was both beautiful and perfectly functional. The walls could adjust their transparency, the floors provided perfect cushioning, and the air was always perfectly clean. Dr. Linda Kim was waiting for Elena in the main laboratory. She was a specialist in interspecies medicine who had come from Earth specifically to study the Verdani's healing abilities. "Elena, the results from last week's tests are incredible," Dr. Kim said, showing her a holographic display of medical data. "The symbiotic volunteers are showing complete immunity to over 300 different diseases. Their cellular regeneration rate is increased by 400%. Elena felt the Verdani's quiet pride. The plant had been perfecting these healing techniques for millions of years, and it was thrilled to finally be able to help other species. Any negative side effects? Elena asked. None that we can detect. The Vordani seems to be very careful about not making changes that would harm the host. It's like it instinctively knows what each species needs. Elena watched as the latest group of volunteers prepared for the symbiosis process. Each person would receive a small Verdani tendril that would integrate with their nervous system. The process was painless and took only a few minutes. I never thought I'd see the day when humans would willingly merge with the galaxy's most feared organism, Dr. Stevens said with a smile. The Verdani was never really dangerous, Elena replied. It was just lonely and misunderstood. Sometimes, the things we fear most are the things that need our help the most. Elena spent the afternoon visiting different sections of the planet. In the agricultural zone, the Verdani was working with farmers from 6 different species to develop crops that could grow in extreme environments. In the research zone, scientists were studying the plant's ability to break down toxic materials and create clean energy. The most impressive area was the cultural center, where the Verdani had created spaces for different species to share their art, music, and literature. Elena watched as a Centauri poet read his work to an audience that included humans, Cepharians, and even a few Andromedans. The Verdani is learning about culture and art, Elena explained to a group of visiting diplomats. It's fascinated by the creative expressions of different species. It's even started creating its own art. Elena led the diplomats to a massive sculpture garden where the Verdani had created living artworks that changed and evolved over time. Each sculpture told a story about cooperation between different species. As the sun set, Elena made her way to her favorite spot on the planet, a peaceful grove where she often went to communicate more deeply with the Verdani. The plant had created a small house for her, made entirely of living matter that adjusted to her needs. How are you feeling today? Elena asked the Verdani as she sat down among the glowing flowers. The plant's response came as a wave of contentment and gratitude. The Verdani was happier than it had ever been in its millions of years of existence. It was no longer alone, and it was finally able to fulfill its purpose of creating beauty and helping other life forms. Elena felt the Verdani's memories flowing through her mind. She saw images of the amazing things they had accomplished together. The diseases they had cured, the environments they had created, the species they had brought together in cooperation. Elena, came Captain Morrison's voice through her communicator. We just received some exciting news. The Council has approved funding for 10 more Verdani integration projects on different planets. They want to create a network of cooperative worlds across the galaxy. Elena smiled as she felt the Verdani's excitement. A plant's dream of creating a galaxy full of cooperative worlds was finally becoming reality. There's more news, Captain Morrison continued. The Academy of Sciences has established the Elena Martinez Institute for Interspecies Communication. They want you to head the program. Elena was honored, but she knew where she belonged. Thank you, Captain, but I think I'll stay here. The Verdani and I have a lot more work to do. Elena looked around at the beautiful world they had created. Together, what had started as humanity's greatest threat had become its greatest opportunity. The Verdani had taught them that cooperation was more powerful than conflict, that understanding was more valuable than fear. Elena, the Verdani communicated, directly to her mind, thank you for teaching me that I don't have to be alone. Thank you for teaching me that the most dangerous things in the universe sometimes just need a friend. Elena replied. As night fell, Elena walked through the bioluminescent gardens that the Verdani had created. The planet glowed with soft, beautiful light, and she could hear the sounds of different species working and playing together. Elena had started this journey as a xenobotanist, studying a dangerous alien plant. Now she was something new, a bridge between species, a translator between different forms of life. She was still human, But she was also part of something larger. The Verdani had shown her that the universe was full of wonders waiting to be understood. It had taught her that cooperation could overcome any obstacle, that friendship could bridge any gap between different forms of life. Elena smiled as she felt the Verdani's consciousness gently touching her mind. They were partners now, working together to create a better future for all species in the galaxy. The most lethal plant in the universe had become humanity's greatest ally, and Elena had become the first human to prove that understanding was always more powerful than fear in the distance. She could see ships from dozens of different worlds approaching the planet. Each one carried representatives who wanted to learn about cooperation and symbiosis. The Verdani was no longer the galaxy's most feared organism. It was becoming its greatest teacher. Elena had accomplished something that no other human had ever done. She had taken the galaxy's greatest threat and turned it into its greatest hope. She had